it really pushed not only my own stamping capabilities, but the limits of the machine to its maximum. Can we put seeds in the disc? We tried it. And he goes, yeah, I did a study and this is actually biodegradable. And I was like, no way. When we first started, there were some jokes, AGL always goes left. We definitely are in the talks of working out with a high level caliber player that would be on the touring level.
Hey everyone, it's Greg from Six Sided Discs, and welcome back to All Six Sides, our podcast where we explore the world of disc golf from every angle. Today we're talking to Josh Jones, owner of Above Ground Level Discs, perhaps better known as AGL. AGL is a disc manufacturer out of Northern California. Starting with just one approved disc in 2017, they now boast a full lineup of 17 discs, team members across the country and around the world, and they're just getting started. I reached out to Josh to see if he'd be interested in sending us some discs to test for our first impression series, and he generously sent us over a dozen discs to test, so you can watch that video alongside this one. There's a link in the video description. Josh, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So I have a lot of different things I want to ask you about, but off the start, let's talk a little bit about AGL's background.
Sure.
Unlike many of the, let's say, smaller manufacturers in disc golf that were started post-COVID or around that sort of 2020 boom time, AGL predates the pandemic by several years. What's your personal disc golf origin story, and when did you realize that you wanted to take that into manufacturing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we actually started off as a brand, and it wasn't actually AGL. It was a brand called Disc Flickers. And, we had our stamp or, our branding on clothing, or we stamp other manufacturers' discs and sell those. So we were definitely, just creating, the footprint, so to speak, with our media and our marketing, etc. But we were just building the brand. And then someone actually did some dye work, some stencil dye work, and they made it say a profanity that kind of forced us to think twice about the name. At that time, I was working at Enterprise Rental Car, and it was at the Monterey Airport. And I think this was probably right around 2013, maybe 2014. Yeah, my daughter was probably about a year and a half. And so that was when we decided to change the name. But I was at the airport, and I happened to hear it, just come in over the radio, 30,000 feet above ground level. And, I just was like, a light bulb went off. And so at first, when we started to think about manufacturing, we were thinking about going like plain names and, aeronautical, I guess. Is that the right word? You might have to edit that out.
Hey, it's good enough for me.
Okay. My wife's always like, you make up words all the time. So, we were going to go with an airplane, themed naming convention. How about that?
Yeah.
And so, with like the F-15 or the B-52 bomber or something like that. And then we realized, with lots of feedback with our fans and, team members and stuff that, the airplane or flying objects, we'll say, theme has kind of been overplayed. And so it's a little, hitting the nail on the head. And so we wanted to be different. We wanted to be unique. And my wife actually was the one who had the idea to name everything after trees. And, we weren't quite, set on the mission statement that we are now, which is wanting to be the greenest disc golf company out there. But you can kind of see where that seed was planted, pun intended, where, where we started to create the brand around trees and nature oriented. And we thought that was definitely, tying in with what we do and wanting to take care of the trees that are around us. I think, as I've designed a few courses as well. I'm a big believer in not taking the trees down, not cutting any trees down, and I went out to work with another course designer. I won't name names. And they were like, oh, let's take that tree down. Let's take that tree down. I'm like, no. they're shot shaping, and that will look so cool if people can get around that tree. And
Yeah.
I think there's just different ways of approaching things and different ways of looking at stuff, right? So, and sometimes a fresh set of eyes is always great, and that's a big one. As I learned to take the ego hat off and lean on people, and it's just because I had the idea to build a disc golf company didn't necessarily mean that I had the idea to go the tree theme. It's definitely my wife, and I lean on our team members in so many different aspects to come up with the names. Like, they get to name every single disc that we put out. I've never named any of the discs that we've put out, any of the molds. So we let them come up with what mold they're going to make next, like an overstable mid, or now we have the beach. But whatever we're going to work on next, I let them decide that. So that's pretty cool. We try to keep it very player oriented and very team focused is my goal for sure.
So tell me a little bit more about the team. You mentioned they have a role to play in helping to name the discs. What else do they do? How many members are they? Where are they located?
Well, now that during this recording, it's 2024 January, we have, I think it's 156 team members all over the U.S., Canada, Finland, Thailand, Japan, Australia. So all over, which is amazing. I'm very proud of that fact. And we do have different groups or different layers to our teams. We have a tournament team. We have a kind of social media team, and then we have like our ambassadors. Whereas the ambassadors are guys who just really love the sport and really, love AGL and want to support AGL. They don't necessarily feel like they always want to get stuff for free, because they just want to support and grow the sport through AGL, which is something that we want to help them support us, help themselves. So it needs to be symbiotic and mutually beneficial, even on that ambassador level. And as a social media level, they have requirements that they have to do per week, per month, etc. And then they get rewarded for those in how many likes and shares, etc., referrals and whatnot. So they get graded on that. And then the tournament team, obviously, depending on how they play, our only prerequisite for them is they have to play in 10 PDGA sanctioned events per year.
Nice.
And then we have an open bag. We're completely open bag. We let people play, with whatever. I hope that being on our team, I would hope that they have at least one AGL. That's in the contract. Is I hope that I literally write it like this too, that I hope you would have at least one AGL in your bag, because otherwise, why are you on the team?
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer in that one. So
that's a fair request and a fair expectation, I'd say.
Yeah.
So the team it sounds like you've got a really well-developed team that's really involved in a lot of the things that are going on with the business. Who else is involved in like the day-to-day operations? Obviously, we see you super active on Facebook. I see your Stampin' Discs right behind you, but who else is involved in what's going on?
So ultimately, it is myself who pretty much handles most of the spinning of the plates. My daughter, she might come in on the weekends, help fill some orders. My wife is actually really good at picking out names of colors. She has epilepsy, so she can't actually do a whole lot of work. But she's really good at hey, this is plum purple or something, or whatever, and I would just be like, that's purplish.
Yeah, chartreuse, right?
Yeah. You're funny. So yes, I definitely have a problem naming colors. And so that's an inside joke on the fan pages. I actually thought a color like this was chartreuse. I thought chartreuse was like a pinkish purple color. And then people make fun of me because it's not. It's like a neon yellow. I know that now.
I just think it sounds cool. I don't really know what color it is, even though I have a degree in graphic design.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, they had to show me a color wheel to point out my flaws.
Nice.
But yeah, no, we have a team member who's also an inside kind of graphic designer for us. He actually gets the stamp, so to speak, prepped, the artwork on to a file that then we send to the metal guys who cut the metal for us. So he, whether or not he actually did the graphic design, the artwork himself, he takes anyone's artwork and then puts that into the file that we use to submit to our metal. And he obviously doesn't mess with the integrity of the file or the art. We stamp pretty as is. I think everyone sees our stamping, and we're quickly becoming, some rippling of waves on Reddit, I hear.
Nice.
With our stamp. Yeah.
So you also mentioned earlier about your mission statement, working to be the greenest disc golf company. I think in the disc golf world, at least in the last year or two, Trash Pan has made a lot of headlines in that department with sustainability and recycling. What are some of the things that AGL are doing in that arena to try and be a sustainable, green focused company?
Well, I mean, certain things that he may be a little bit better on advertising or marketing than we are, we had already kind of had in effect. I have a box just down here to my right that is, discs that either team members have sent me, or, from discs that have gotten chewed up by a dog, or, things that just aren't sellable, X out, faulty F2s, whatever you want to call them, that we end up regrinding and turning back into a nice, new, pretty plastic. So, we definitely believe in, not necessarily always, it's not always recycled, but we're reducing and reusing. I think there's that Captain Planet layer to it, which is great. It's throwing my age out there. But yeah, I think, we are always honest about what we put into our plastic. And if it might not necessarily be 100% recycled, it is going to be recycled and regrind, which is kind of recycled in a way. But by the technical definitions of the words recycled, it's although it's not, it's not technically recycled, but we're reducing and reusing our waste and putting that into, the next batch of discs that, come out good. And then that same 5% of, quality, or bad parts, get regrinded and thrown back in. So it ends up getting used, and it minimizes the amount of recycled material that we have to add in, which is great. And so, like, we did a batch of Locust, though, that was 70-80% recycled material, and the rest was regrind. We also specialize in using sustainable material like hemp. So we take hemp fibers and actually make a polymer-based hemp fiber plastic compound, and it's both in a high-end TPU polyethylene as well as our baseline mixed with a little bit of polypropylene. So I don't know of too many other companies, besides Gateways Manufacturing, that allows them to kind of take that initiative by mixing parts. Or mixing polymers like that, And so, we're also trying to use like recycled nylon. We'll take, we did some clear see-through plastic that, a lot of people call ice plastic, and we used recycled hospital tubing. We did sterilize it first, don't worry. But yeah, we, took hospital tubing and, boiled that down or grinded that down and then heated that up and in the hopper and squirts that into the next mold. And next thing you know, we have some really cool see-through kind of crystal clear discs that were awesome. And we've done that a few times on a few different molds, usually in a polyethylene or a premium plastic, or Alpine we call it. And, we would call it an ice bab or ice baobab, whatever. So yeah, we definitely have done that, using recycled materials as well. And sometimes we come across very unique materials as well. Like we did a batch of plastic that we let the team come up with the name, and they called it the Deep, because it was the Deep plastic, and they called it that because we used underwater sea cables, and it had a low density polymer in there. And what that did was when we used it to then inject and to put into the injection molding system, the disc came out with a much lower weight than we've ever been able to do in that particular mold.
Mm.
And so it was really, really cool to get that lower weight, but it also felt like a premium plastic. We're talking in like 150s or lower,
Yeah.
in a wide diameter disc, which is actually pretty tough to do without using a blowing agent or anything like that. So I think that is just kind of what sets us apart by trying to be the greenest disc golf company out there. I mean, on top of that, we have the ability to give our customers the option or opportunity to plant 2 trees with every single disc that they order, which is really, really cool. So if they were to purchase this money tree, which is our newest disc out, for example, they could click a box at the checkout screen and it says, do you want to include your tree seed along with your disc? So then we will send a corresponding tree seed. So this being the money tree, we actually send a money tree seed with your disc, and we put it in a little baggie, and then we put this in a bag with a Ziploc bag. So and then we actually send that over to you. And depending on if you ordered 1, 2, 10, or 20, we still do that, which is really cool. And then after you place that order, and if you don't want to do that, or maybe you've already done it and this is like your backup money tree and you already have a money tree seed, you don't have to click that box. It's an opt-in feature, which is really cool. So many people ended up having like shoe boxes full of seeds because we gave them out every time. And they're like, Josh, we have too many. So I said, hey, send them back and we'll make sure we get them to people that want them, or ready to plant them or trying to plant them. So that's the whole goal, is we want to plant the seeds. And so we also work with companies like One Tree Planted, Tree Nation, and we plant trees with them. And so, we had One Tree Planted actually just sponsor our last subscription box, which was in December, which was really cool. And everybody got a tree planted in their name, and they got a beanie that had, like a forest going around it and a sticker that says One Tree Planted. And then they got their subscription disc as well, which is, was a really cool stamp on it. So, um, we work with them. And then Tree Nation is another company that we work with. And, for example, with Tree Nation, they'll actually show you where your tree gets planted. It could be in Asia, or it could be here in America.
Oh, wow.
It could be any continent, probably besides Antarctica. But they do these tree, campaigns, tree planting campaigns everywhere. And we plant a tree. You have to click it. It's a secondary email that comes right after your order confirmation,
Mm-hmm.
and you click that and you accept it. Did you get one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you get to kind of see where your tree is planted and get a picture of it, and I think that's really cool for folks as well.
Yeah, I think, and that's certainly totally unique for what you guys are doing. I don't see anybody else doing anything like that. And I found it really interesting too. I sort of felt inspired while I was putting together the video that's coming out alongside this podcast, our first impression series. As I was researching the discs and, learning about how they flew, I sort of felt like I needed to include this supporting information about the tree that goes along with the disc. And so hopefully through that video, people also learn a little bit about all the different trees. One of the things I learned, other than all the fascinating facts and stuff that I found about trees, is that I'm better at researching discs than trees. Because that part of the video production took a lot longer than learning about the discs. So, but that was fun. It was really interesting. I just kind of like naturally fell into it. So if nothing else, you're, I think, just helping people get more familiar with the environment, and they're out there, they're throwing the discs past those trees, into those trees, if we're being realistic. And why not learn more about that nature that you're out there exploring as you're playing disc golf?
Yeah. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. So, that's where the kind of mission statement just turned into what it is. And I think that even how we're leaving it is still kind of open-ended, because it can be constantly evolving and constantly getting better. And I think that's the goal, is if I can even, make any of the big companies, or a newer company like Jesse and Trash Panda think twice and think, how they're doing their manufacturing, how they're producing their plastic, how they're, getting their plastic? Are they being honest about their source material?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a huge thing to, convey to your, customers. And I think all of us that play disc golf, like you said, we have this respect for nature. And the more that we play, I think we start to develop that almost sense of ownership, even if it's not your course. You're just like, whoa, 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 hey, dude, what are you doing? Why are you littering? Like, pick that up. And
Yeah.
I think that of pride, it kind of gets, built into all of us through disc golf and our love of the sport. So, it only makes sense that going forward, the bigger brands should start thinking about this in the same facet where it's not just one mold, it's not just one line, it's an entire lineup, and you're talking all of your molds. And maybe that's why it would be so difficult, because you have so many molds.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother ball game too. I don't know if I would ever want to go that route of having that many molds. We might just make a tweak to a existing mold. If it wasn't selling as well, why discontinue? Maybe let's see what's wrong with it and make some changes to it.
Yeah.
I think that's the whole process of being, looking at your faults and learning from them, rather than seeing that and being like, oh, okay, we'll just throw it in the garbage. Like, that's that, same kind of mentality that goes against recycling, right? Like, we don't want to just throw it away. We want to figure out how can we use that and not be done with that mold. Like, I want to keep using it. Let's figure out what's wrong with it, learn from our mistakes, and make that mold better
Yeah.
that people will actually enjoy. So yeah, I'm always game. And like, we're talking right now about adjusting one of our drivers, and I'm just like, the team is talking about it. And so I'm like, sure, if you guys want to do it, let's do it. But if we do it, it can't go back. So,
Yeah.
it's going to be how it's going to be. And we'll have to get a new PDJ approval if we actually alter the mold. So that's also exciting too, to think that you can have such a variant with the same, feel, so to speak, in your hand, which is going to be really exciting. And then it also drives up that, not necessarily pushes the collector's market, but the people that truly are like, oh man, that first run or that second run or that third run, whatever. But then they changed it on the fourth run. So where are those first, second, third?
Yeah.
And rather than discontinue it, it's evolved, and you may prefer it the old way. I get it. I understand. But if we have a poll and a growing consensus of like wanting the change, we kind of have to listen to the masses. And if we're looking at the numbers too, and things start to kind of coincide and align with that change, then I'm all for it. I'm totally willing to, do that. And if we make a mistake, I'll fall on the grenade too, which we've done before as well. And so you got to learn from those mistakes, and you're only going to get better. I think my commitment is the one thing I hope that is truly translated over to our fans and our family, or community, so to speak. Because I think everybody knows, like, I'm here to keep going. I'm here to push it to the limits, to keep trying, and not just for my own family's success or my own success, but I think I want to see us, change the way that these companies are looking at disc golf. And I sometimes kind of chuckle to myself when I see certain people, having that imitation, and I think imitation's the best form of flattery, right? So I'm all for it. I'm totally all for it. Let's keep making some ripples and turn them into waves, because I know how to surf. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, and hopefully more companies adopt this approach of, reducing and reusing and recycling as much as they can, because there's plenty of discs out there. And if we're not responsible with the environment, we're all going to be playing in parking lots.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think, something that Jesse and I were working on together, but, it maybe got sidelined for a bit, was a project that we kind of started, which was a nonprofit, how we wanted to look at courses and then work with course designers and then the city and the county to, minimize the impact. Because as a disc golfer and just any, a hiker or walker in nature, every time you step a foot down that path, it's detrimental to nature. And so, looking at ways in which we can counteract that, is definitely key in the longevity of where our disc golf courses are going to be, in 20, 30 years. The famous disc golf course De La Viega, I had the pleasure of growing up playing. And, I look at some of the guys who were the caretakers of that property, and, when they have to like close certain holes because of, erosion control, or, just make certain changes that, definitely, might shut off certain areas of the course. But in the long run, it's going to make that course able to have people come to it for that many more years in the future. So, yeah.
You talked a couple times in there about the manufacturing of your discs and going through selecting different types of plastics and so many aspects of that. It's well documented, of course, published on your website that Gateway produces AGL's discs. What was the decision like in let's say the early days of AGL about, how and who to partner with? How did you end up landing on Gateway, or were they your first manufacturing partner?
They were not. So we actually did partner up with a manufacturer in Canada. I signed an NDA not to say names, but we're no longer with them. And we had done one mold with them and one alteration to the mold, but 2 runs after that alteration. Actually, 3 runs, excuse me. So a total of 4 runs that disc. One was just a very smaller batch run. But anyways, we did that, and it just didn't really go over that well. And that's one of the mistakes that we had to learn from. Even after altering a mold and making a modification to the mold, it just didn't sell and throw as well as we would have hoped. I think the latter caused the former. So, yeah.
And what was the name of that disc?
That's the Cypress that is discontinued.
Cypress.
So, yes. So then when Gateway reached out to us, it was something that I was not expecting. They kind of saw that we, had some pretty good social media, despite even having a disc that, at that time wasn't discontinued, but maybe wasn't doing as well as we would have hoped. But we were doing pretty good traction-wise with our social media and our marketing. And Gateway reached out to us saying, that they, were honest and open about the fact they sometimes had trouble penetrating the West Coast market. You did have a couple of other manufacturers that were pretty prevalent here, especially Central Coast area and also just California in general. And so it definitely is a little tougher, I think, to set up a manufacturing company where you have such strong competition, as opposed to maybe being in an area that you don't have, 100 miles or 200 miles, you don't have another manufacturer around you. So you have the ability to kind of start with a little bit more tabula rasa or clean slate. And so, I thought that this could be a potential possibility where we could work together and create a more expanded lineup rather quickly. Gateway at that point was willing to work with us in offering smaller quantity of batches. And we came out with our first mold, which was like a dual mold with Gateway. It was our Madrone and Manzanita. They share the same top, but then we took a bottom from Gateway on the Madrone, which was their famous Voodoo. And then on the Manzanita, we took their famous Warlock. And thereby giving us 2 discs that flew similar but had a different feel in the hand. I kind of would equate that to, at that time, what I was throwing was dynamic disc judges. Feldberg and I were friends, and I probably had 40 judges. And I was the kind of beaded guy. And they also had the Warden, which was pretty much the same thing except beadless.
Yeah.
And so when I, used that as a selling feature, which was, hey, it's very similar flight, but it's a different feel in your hand. The Madrone has a little micro bead, and the Manzanita is a beadless feel. So, depending on which route you chose, the beaded or beadless route, we had a putter for you at that point with our driver that we currently had. Again, that wasn't quite discontinued at that point. So, and we hit the ground running with Gateway. That went over fairly well by giving people those options, and now having 3 molds under our kind of, name. And we quickly came out with a mid-range, right? That was the one thing we were lacking. We had putter, we had a driver, but we needed the mid-range. So we came out with a Magnolia. It ended up being a mold that one of our partners, a collaboration partner, got to name and kind of pick out, which was a semi-neutral to slightly stable to 0-2. Maybe the baseline could break into be a -1 or a -2. 1 or something like that. But the Magnolia is just really, really comfortable in the hand, has a lot of glide to it, flies rather quickly out of your hand for a 5-speed. Some people would argue it would be a 6-speed, but, I think in the disc golf world, we don't see a whole lot of 6-speeds. So that's where we ended up landing on having a different flight number for our baseline and our premium plastic. And when we did that, we came out with, now we had our full lineup, our 2 putters, a mid-range, and a driver. And so I think people started to kind of take us a little bit more serious at that point. We were able to open up sales to shops that maybe wanted to carry us, especially local shops. And, so we're always thankful for that, initial support. And our local, core team that really kind of developed and pushed us and, promoted us. And so we still have a core team, which, isn't one of those other teams I mentioned, but these are guys that I lean on. I trust, I consult, I come at because like I said earlier, I've learned to take that ego hat off.
Yeah.
And having people that, have different, inputs, different ideas, different viewpoints, mindsets, etc. They all have, the ability to give me some insight that I might not have had or might not be thinking about, or, a different view that I might not be seeing. And so it's truly essential to have, this core team of people that I lean on and trust so much. And those are the kind of guys who, we do get to go like, hey, who do you want to or think should be the next person to pick the disc name? Or who do you think gets to go like, what do you think we should make next? And so I lean on that core team to help me decide that, or who's going to be the next captains for the next year. Because I know that they are just unbiased and honest and, sometimes brutally honest, but I need that, from people that you rely on to consult with. So, that's definitely an asset. And from there on, I think we just kind of steadily grew, I want to say organically, and I pun intended there as well, because it really was. We don't pay for, sponsored TV ads. We don't pay for YouTube ads. Like we've maybe done one, and then I think someone else did one for us, which was really cool. So it's been very minimalistic in what we've had to invest advertising, and all of our marketing and social media has definitely been grassroots and, team driven.
Yeah.
And then we ended up bringing on, once we came out with the Sycamore, one of our collab partners at that time, who now has his own apparel disc golf company, and it's Chain Bang. And so Sam has a background in social media and marketing, and Sam kind of came on board. And then, Sam is now a percentage owner of AGL Discs, and he actually is the guy who runs all of our Instagram, the business Facebook, and the Twitter and TikTok and all that jazz. So he does quite a bit, and we're very appreciative of that.
Well, and I love to hear that, because I'll say, as we are also technically a disc golf retailer, I don't normally shout out other retailers. It's not good for business, but shout out to Chain Bang, because we met him at Idlewild this year, and that's where I got the first couple of discs from you guys. That we checked out months before you and I got connected. And so those are included in our first impressions video as well. We got a Madrone and a Manzanita from him as well.
Awesome. Those are probably first runs.
Nice. Coming back to Gateway for just a moment, we talked a little bit about how you kind of ended up with them. I'm curious, as a partner, then, as your molding partner, how much influence and say do you have in the development of a new mold? Are you, I know Gateway has like a huge selection of prototypes. Are you able to offer, a lot of feedback on like what you're looking for? Or do they give you some stuff to choose from?
Yeah. Yes to all of those, actually. So there have been times in which I come at them, from that team input, like, hey, we do need the overstable mid. What do you guys have available in molds right now? And he can go, well, I could take this top and this bottom, and we could do this and do that, and it's probably going to be pretty overstable. We try it out. You want to see? And we're like, sure. And so, Dave is very quick. He's certified genius, literally. I mean, his IQ is just out there. His ability.
Dave McCormick, of course, the owner of Gateway you're referring to.
Yes, Dave McCormick, the owner of Gateway. His ability to find ways to mix polymers that probably wouldn't normally go together, or people are still like, how'd you do that? How did you mix nylon into the polyethylene? And it's really unique and I've learned a lot from him in a lot of ways. But there are times in which he will do that, and give us 4 or 5 different variants of this overstable mid-range. And then I will take a couple of those, each variant, right? 4 or 5 of each one. And we divvy those out with our core team members, some of them that are local pros or guys that, we have close by. What do you think of this? What do you think of this? What do you think of this? And, the more feedback we get, I think that's, like I said, I can't make those decisions myself. I have to lean on people. And so when you start to get a general consensus of a lot of people saying like, hey, it's this, well, then you're like, okay, I guess we're doing that. And so it's a lot easier for me to just feel like, well, this is the way we got to go. And it just feels right. And so then there's times like what we're talking about earlier where we have a current mold out, and then we're talking about, let's make an adjustment to it. So I can then have that input or that level of input or change, I guess, with Gateway to go like, hey, you know what we're going to do? I want to just shave this off right here. Let's just shave it off altogether and just I want to make it at an angle that way. Why, Josh? Well, I do. The guys say it, so let's do it. And then we'll try it out. And it might not work, but it might work. And so, usually there's a reason to our madness and lots of consultation and talks. But we don't necessarily just do it kind of willy-nilly. But, we do take risks. We do take chances. And I think sometimes those pay off and sometimes they don't. And, we might have to then either discontinue it or make a different change to it that then makes it, acceptable. So, I think Gateway gives us that ability to kind of go either direction. And we do have quite a bit of say in what we're looking for. And, sometimes he may even want to push a mold my way, and I have to be like, we're not ready quite for that, or we have something that's similar and that might battle this and then this one might lose sales. So, I think there's definitely a fine line in, what I feel comfortable with him referring, obviously, compared to what I want to just go ahead and give him complete autonomy on. I do give him some autonomy on, hey, you have an idea for some plastic, I'm willing to try it. If it's recycled, it's regrind, it's going to be or a sustainable product, let's give it a shot. Can we put seeds in the disc? We tried it, and it pushed up to the disc. Didn't work out, but then it got us thinking, like, can we take pine needles and we grinded up pine needles and put that in the disc? We've taken lavender and grinded that up just recently. I think I may have one right here. This is from like a X out mistake, but it's in a bag here.
Everybody make sure you turn on your smell-o-vision.
Yeah, exactly. You guys turn on your smell-o-vision. Because it smells
really cool.
like lavender. It's really cool. So this has lavender extracts, grinded up and put in there with the polymer as it's going in. So, it's just really cool that we get to play with things like that. And, being in Santa Cruz, we had, pine needles literally outside our shop. And so it was a Douglas fir. And, I was like, great. I wish we were
Yeah.
making Douglas firs at that point. We happened to be making madrones and manzanitas, but it still worked out. We got to put pine needles into a disc, and then when you smelt it, it smelled like pine needles
Wow.
and pine. It was just incredible. And so there's other cool things that we do, like taking, the foil scraps that I have, right? And so this scrap that's been used for a Team AGL stamp, we're going to take this, put it in a paper shredder grinder, and then that ends up being the metal flake that you see inside the disc.
Oh, wow. I love that. That's really cool.
Yeah, I think, there's so many different ways that you can take that level of regrind and reducing and recycling. It might not necessarily be recycling, like I said, in the technical definition of it, but we're sure as heck not making it go into a landfill. And that's what I'm, really proud about. So.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I find the stuff about the foil stamping particularly interesting. Just that sample that you held up there is more waste than it is, usable foil that actually ended up on the disc. And so finding a new way to use that is, I think, fantastic, because where else is that going to go? You only get to use a tiny portion of that. So that's really, really cool.
Well, I found out some other really interesting things. I did a lot of research on this, but foil is essentially made up of, crushed up metallic, pieces, but then it's also made with this this is just the Mylar. So this is only Mylar, which is at the bottom, that makes up the, bottom half, and then the purple or the pink here or the chartreuse, right? Is on is on top of it. So this is a much thinner layer. It's very, very thin. It's tissue paper thin. It wants to just roll back up. But it's really cool to see that and know that this part is actually, I learned from the guy who sells us this foil. He said that he did a study when he was in college, and he's talking college in the late 70s. And he goes, yeah, I did a study, and this is actually biodegradable. And I was like, no way. Can you say that thesis and your essay or your term paper, whatever it was? So I'm waiting on him to send that back to me. But that's really cool too, because I think that's essential in what we do. And also saying that, most of it isn't, right, the metal that you see, it's what sticks to it is actually this part. So, and then what gets wiped off is usually the metal, unfortunately, and then you still have this still on there. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, like when you've wiped a stamp, that little ghost image is still the Mylar that's on there, huh?
Well, so that can come off with acetone or MEK or a strong alcohol. It could come off, it could wipe off, and then it would actually break this down and it would wipe off with it. Metal is what you would see, but this would get kind of broken down and kind of dissolved or, wiped away, cleared out with the solution. But you would still see the indentation from it as if I did a blank stamp. But a lot of people think that's how you get ghost stamps. Unfortunately, that's not how you get ghost stamps. This is how you get ghost stamps. You just stamp it with just this. When you stamp a Frisbee or a disc with just the metal plate coming down, you actually do create embossing or burning into the flight plate. And so I've had it where it goes down, then it sticks up to my...
Oh, yeah. It
goes with the machine and sticks up to it. You're like, no, gosh, I forgot to put the foil in. And that has happened. And, depending on how hot it is or how long you had your your timing set to stay down, right? Like it can stay down that fast or it can stay down, that long. And so the longer it embosses or engraves it at that point, it could melt the plastic and get stuck in there. Then you have a problem with your actual stamp and you got to clean. Oh, it's not fun. Not fun. So.
Well, that actually kind of goes right into my next question. So obviously, as a retailer, you're hopefully shipping orders on a regular basis. You're running your sort of retail operation for AGL. But What else? And I think I know the answer based on what's behind you keeps you busy on a day-to-day basis.
Yes, I mean, we also offer hot stamp services for other manufacturers. I think, some we're not allowed to say who, but if you see some really cool registration stamps, you could probably bet they came off of this bad boy. And then some are okay with it. And like, I think Jester Disc just admitted that, we're going to be starting to take over most of their stamping. They're in Fresno, so another manufacturer, starting to come up here out of California, and not too far away from me. They're Central California. We're now way up Northern California, but I can have definitely a lot of respect for what they're doing, how they're doing it, and I've been there, so let me help you out as much as I can. They don't have a stamp machine quite like this. They don't have one at all. So they either had to have their manufacturer who's making their disc stamp them, or, sometimes when you have that situation go on, one of the reasons why I got this was because when you have a manufacturer stamp your disc, when you're talking 100 discs, let's say on an average, you might get 4 foil colors, because it's easier to put the foil feed machine on and just run 25 with that and 25 Rasta and 25 white, 25 black, and we're done. Okay. And then but when I have that control over it and the ability to create the options and the variables for our customers, I think that's essential to a small business and someone who is up and coming, because having options is what we all want. As I think, especially Americans, we definitely love to have options, and we hate when our options get taken away from us or minimized. So, I definitely want to create as many options as possible. And I pride myself on having as many foil options as we do. We have over 130 foils right now to choose from. And yeah, we can do incredible things. And I think we're one of 5, maybe 6 companies that are doing registration stamps, but we're probably the only one doing certain types of registration stamps as well. So it's very, very unique, some of the things that we're doing. Something is so unique that I just got done doing last week. I can't even talk about it because I signed an NDA, but it really pushed not only my own stamping capabilities, but the limits of the machine to its maximum. And I was very, very proud of what we did together. And how it came out, because I think off of maybe, I think it was 400 discs, there was maybe 5 mistakes and 5 testers that you probably could still sell for a decent, number, because you couldn't really tell it was like not perfect. You know what I'm saying? It's probably like 95, 98% perfection. And then you have the rest of them that were like, whoa, amazing. So, I was having that kind of stats on something that was a quad register, 4 layers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just, wow. It was, it was a lot. I have some scars to prove it on my hand. So, it was fun. So I did that, I think, over the course of 2 days, and you're talking quad stamp of 400 discs, so 1,600 stamps, over 2 days. And it was probably a total of 12 hours, devoted to just that project. So that was a lot.
So a lot more than just shipping discs, keeping you busy for sure.
Yes.
And you mentioned earlier also into a little bit of course design as well.
Yes. So we've been kind of dipping our toes in that water. My family and I also just got property where we have 7 acres, maybe just shy of 7 acres. And so we're building the home course for AGL. And so folks could then come and, pick up their disc and play and, do a round there. So that's always been one of my ultimate goals, is to have it all under one roof, literally. And, to also provide the opportunity for people to come, peruse. Like we'd obviously have maybe a small pro shop and not just AGL, just like before we were AGL and, before we were a manufacturer, I purchased as a wholesaler from all of the big companies and, I have no problems with them. I definitely think there's, a seat on every couch, as my dad used to say. So there's a home, right? There's a home for everybody. And I think, like I said, providing options is key. Now, it's my goal as the manufacturer, AGL, to go, hey, you want to throw such and such? Well, here, let me show you an AGL that's maybe comparable, and having the ability to be, in front of 20,000 discs and say, oh, you want a 7-speed that is straight, but have maybe a little stronger finish at the end, or one that has a little bit more fade or turn before straightening out, and we can do that with our Sycamore, which is really cool. And, creating that same mold in a couple different plastic variants, might make it do slightly different things, but you have the same disc in your bag or 3 of them and they do different things. So, we're not the only manufacturer that does that with plastic variants. And I think it's key to giving your player those options while still having the same feel and comfortableness in your hand. Is that a word?
Hey, it makes sense to me.
Comfortability? Okay, cool. Mike's going to watch it. 3. I'm at 3 new words.
So I want to zoom out a little bit from AGL and maybe as somebody who's in the industry, I want to get your take on, let's say, current events a little bit and we've seen like some significant changes in disc golf, obviously over the last few years, this huge boom in 2020 and 2021. But as the last, let's say 6 months to a year have unfolded, I think people are kind of taking a step back and looking and saying, okay, maybe things aren't growing as rapidly as they were. Simon Lizotte was quoted on a podcast recently saying he thinks, disc golf is kind of plateaued. It's maybe not, totally going backwards, but we've hit like, a point where we're not necessarily adding to the sport. So what do you think are some things that have factored into that? Have you noticed that as somebody who's in the business day to day?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think when you and I initially talked, it was obviously before the new year here, and I can be honest and open here without like divulging too much information. But, ultimately, what I think is that our retail was able to stay consistent and relevant and therefore stayed pretty consistent to the previous year. It was maybe, I think, a 1% change up, actually. It was not much going up. Where we saw a little hit was in our wholesale. And I've talked to a lot of shops. I get to talk to retail shops, email, phone calls, etc. And when you hear from the physical brick and mortar shops that they're not having as much foot traffic and therefore overall sales, of course that's going to translate up the ladder to me. That's, sending my disc down to the brick and mortar. So, that's where our wholesale maybe took a dip. At the same time, it was a hard one to judge because we also this year let Gateway start selling AGL wholesale. Now, I knew that might be a slight kick in the nards in the short term, but I'm hoping that with their reach and their ability to sell in markets that I'm not currently in, like European markets, African markets, Asian markets, that we're we have tiny little, sales spots, sure, and some sponsored players in certain areas, sure. I'm not discrediting that. And those guys are spreading the web. And it obviously starts just the same way we started as grassroots in those areas. But the fact that Gateway's been around since 93, 94 with the Wizard and everything, and the Wizard's worldwide, I think, still the best putter sales, even on Infinite, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
I think so. I thought I just saw some article that like their best selling disc was like the Destroyer, and then the second best selling disc was like the Wizard. And so, if you looked at putters, I'm pretty dang sure it was the Wizard and the Luna that were like pretty much up there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that with Gateway's, kind of worldwide recognition and their, ability to have grown their name that well, especially with the Wizard and using the Wizard, that, we get to kind of join forces with them now in their wholesale. Now, I get a percentage of that goes back to AGL, sure, although it's not quite as much as if AGL was selling to those markets. But I might not have either the stock or the ability to get a shipment to some of those areas of that size, quantity, etc. So,
well, international shipping is a whole nother thing. I mean, there's customs. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, we've done, a couple boxes and a couple big bulk boxes, but when you get to pallets or shipping containers, I actually, we haven't gotten to that level yet. I can admit that.
Yeah.
I've had to purchase shipping containers and have our backpacks and accessories and towels. And, we've done a couple shipping containers have sent here, but not on the realm of us, outlet, shipping out. So,
yeah.
But Gateway has. And so, having that infrastructure that they've developed has been essential to the wholesale. So yeah, now we still have the ability to sell wholesale, but it has gone down to some of our regular customers. But we've also had some of our other regular customers just go to Gateway because now they can buy Gateway discs and AGL on the same order and the same invoice. And I can understand that kind of customer,
Yeah, there's definitely some benefits to that.
Yeah, that it's a customer user friendly standpoint. And so, in the long run, I have to see the benefits, which are it's getting the name out there, it's getting my discs into more people's hands, and getting visibility in areas that we might not currently have or might not been able to for X amount of time, before the grassroots spread there organically. So in that aspect, I'm still very thankful for what they are doing with the wholesale. And like I said, our retail has been able to keep consistent and relevant. Now, I think part of that consistency comes from our ability to keep up with stamps and having some really cool stamps. We've been kind of spreading out, having more artists, contribute their artwork and, graphic design to then put onto stamps. And we try to have 2 or 3 really cool, unique stamps to go along with the stock stamps that we release. Now we're distinguishing even on our stock stamps, where it might say Alpine Hemp or Alpine Lichen or Alpine Tundra or Alpine Boreal, determining what other additive we put into the mix, or, the Alpine Hemp sustainable polymer mix that we put in. And so we're also making all of our stock stamps. There you go. Yeah. All of our stock stamps are now double register like that. And I don't know too many folks that are doing that, to that degree of detail. It takes time. You're stamping that disc twice, which it takes time.
Yeah. You know better than anybody.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to just give you a little process on it, right? We're looking at this one, and it may be a little tough to see there, but it has a black AGL and a pink kind of tree and the pink numbers and the pink letters going across, saying Alpine Hemp. Although I did make a mistake. This is an Alpine Lichen, which is our metal flake. So this is going to end up probably in my bag. It's an awful, awful mistake,
Oh, bummer.
Yeah.
That pretty disc.
Yeah. But
yeah,
what we would end up doing is we would have, 50 or 100 or, whatever of this same color disc. And, we would put all of them on, and I try to do 2 to 4, depending on how much we have. And so let's say, for example, these 2, which are actually twins, we did the same metallic black for the AGL. And then we did the same pink on the tree and the numbers and the Alpine Hemp there. And so we had to stamp all 50 or all 100, whatever. And let's just say for, intensive purposes, we did 100, and each double set, each twin got 2 black or 2 rainbow or 2 pink or 2 chartreuse. and you stamp all of them first with that large AGL. And then when you finish, you have to change the stamp, and you go to the round 2 and you stamp them all again, lining up the tree, lining up the numbers. And it's very tedious and time consuming. But I think that's just, like I said earlier, my commitment to our fans and our community and our supporters, that, how far I want to go besides just doing the old school single stamp, stock stamp.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the single stamps are pretty, plain in regards to having one color, one foil option. So, creating, even if we did the same black on 4, then we can make 2 have pink and 2 have Wonder Bread or 2 have money foil, and then creating that much more variance, and giving our customers that option, which people love.
Speaking of money and Wonder Bread, what are the most popular foils?
Well, you just listed them. Yeah, the money foil and the Wonder Bread for sure. Quickly behind that is, I would definitely say these 2 do really, really well for us. They're holographic, metallic holographic. This is a rainbow silver, silver, but when the light hits, it's rainbow holographic. And then this is a kind of, plum, I don't know, pinkish color. I really love that one. That's one of my favorites. Holographic as well. The light might not do it justice in here, but so mixing those in, definitely I've learned how to kind of get better about picking which foils might work well together with different layers or different combinations of stamps. I failed art and I suck. I can't even draw a stick figure to save my life. And so if my art teacher only knew the stuff that I'm doing right now, she'd probably, I don't know if she's still around, but yeah, she'd be shocked for sure.
Yeah, I've got a good example from you here on one of the locusts you sent us. It's got that kind of glitter stamp in the middle.
Yeah.
And then I think it's almost let's call it like a Vice City, like blue to pink fade kind of deal. Yeah.
We
there
call
you go.
that Winter Sunset. I think
there you go.
Pick the name. And it's funny that some of the names that we would pick, I'd see people start to use, other companies, other manufacturers, even YouTubers, and they're like, oh man, that, Hollywood Sunset or the Winter Sunset. Let me see if I can find the Hollywood Sunset for you, because there is the 2. So this is our Winter Sunset, and that's Hollywood Sunset. It's essentially,
nice.
Gradient, right, stripes. And we have a lot of different versions of stripes. One of our guys was like, you got like all the zebra stripes, gum mixes. And so it's really cool to, keep expanding. I'm constantly looking at the foil selection guide and going, oh, that's new. Let me get one of those guys. And so it's also cool keeping certain foils for certain, very specific things too. So like I have really special pink holographic that I only use when we do our like blank canvas stamps, where I sell the disc with a blank top and we add a very small stamp on the bottom. And it's a very kind of subtle holographic pink. And it's really, really cool. And it's not like pinkish, where people that even don't like pink, they would be like, whoa, that's awesome. So we set stuff aside. We're very particular about that. I'm pretty organized about my foils and which ones do what for which types of plastic and which temperatures and how long it takes for each of them to adhere. And so, the 3 main variables in hot stamping is your heat, your temperature, right? Your timing, which we talked a little bit about, how long does it stay down? The plastic type. So pressure is the other one. So we have on the side of the machine over there, I have a pretty expensive regulator that I can increase the pressure on or decrease the pressure on. So heat, time, and pressure are the 3 big ones. And those have to be adjusted based on thickness of flight plate, plastic type, plastic, not only type like in regards to base or premium, but also I could tell you that a premium from this manufacturer is going to be stamping at a different temperature and time than a premium at this manufacturer, because
Wow.
everybody has different formulas that they use in their premium TPU or polyethylene mix. And, certain things that I was shocked on, when I had to either make such drastic changes to either manufacturer's disc because of how it stamps. And, I'm learning a lot stamping other manufacturers' products, which is, it's been very interesting. So I think, the more experience I get, it's just making me a better stamper on my own stuff too. So that's why I'm just constantly pushing the boundaries on what I and this machine can do. So it's fun. Yeah.
That's really interesting. And I think it's one of those things that when I hear you say it, it makes sense. Like, of course, it's going to have to be different. There's, when a disc golfer feels plastic from one company to another, we can feel the difference. And so it makes sense that there has to be this, level of change in the way that it's manufactured, or the way that it's stamped, or something like that. But I think there's so much about that the average disc golfer doesn't know. So it's really fascinating to hear about that and to be able to share that with people that probably have never really given that much thought just to the foil stamp that's on the disc.
Yeah, well, and I think, what was it, a few months ago or so, maybe longer, and there was that, kind of drama in the stamp, manufacturing world where, is wiping a disc considered illegal? Is, if you be yourself who's not a manufacturer and you purchase one of those little mini hand stamp machines and you stamp the bottom side of your disc with, Greg or six-sided discs and your PDGA number, is that disc now considered PDGA legal if you were to try to use it in a tournament? And so
Right.
I think I'm in a very unique position because I'm smaller, but I'm also similar to certain companies like Dynamic. Like Dynamic orders discs that are manufactured in a whole other country even, right? Then they have them shipped
Yeah.
here and they have them stamped here. I wouldn't be surprised if Latitude does some of their stamping too, but I guarantee you they do some of their stamping in-house in Emporia. I mean, they have to. I'm 99% sure they do. And so if that's the case, then are they considered a legit manufacturer because they're not doing the injection molding in-house? Then if you were to say no, then I'm not either, because Gateway does the manufacturing for me over in St. Louis, Missouri. Now, at least we're in the same country.
Yeah.
But I think, so what I did was I actually got to speak with the guy, Brian Kazansky, or whatever his name is, that was from the PDJ Rules Committee, who implemented this thing because an average player reached out to the PDGA and asked them the question of, hey, I want to buy a small stamp machine and stamp my own disc. Is that okay? Or I think the email that got broadcasted on Reddit was, I went into a disc golf store and they had their own machine stamping discs.
Yeah.
That now make my disc illegal if I had them do it or if I got my own and did it myself. And the PDGA immediately went out of the way and quickly said, yes, that is now illegal because they are not listed as a manufacturer. And so it's scary to think about. There's a lot of disc golf shops out there stamping their discs and adding little mini stamps on. I started adding mini stamps on before I got this big machine so I could learn the process and the intricacies and, get some experience under my belt before I got this big behemoth. And so,
right.
It's really hard because then I talked to the technical standards committee, which is the people that I send my discs in brand new when I want to come out with a new mold. So there's the rules committee and the technical standards committee, and they are different places. They have different addresses even, and they do different things, and they somehow don't communicate well together. And it's crazy.
Typical organization. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's a great, but ultimately when talking to Jeff Holmberg, who's been the head of the Technical Standards Committee for, I think, the last 25 or 27 some years, maybe longer. I probably am wrong. but I know it's been a long time. And he's actually held the longest PDGA job title of any other person in PDGA history. Like, nobody else
Wow.
has been an employee of the PDGA in the same title as Jeff Holmberg has, there at the Technical Standards Committee. And when I asked him, his viewpoint of it was that rule all started from people back in the day that, all the discs were stable and we threw discs into the wall 30 times to make them break in. We would sand stuff down to give it some more turn because those became modifications that were done. And when they look at stamping, the rule that he said from the Rules Committee was it's an aftermarket modification. And that's why it's not valid. But you talk to Jeff Holmberg and he's like, man, I one time threw my disc through a tree and it got stuck through a branch and there was an actual hole all the way through it. And I turned and looked at my disc, my card mates, and we were in the middle of a tournament. And I said, hey, you guys okay with me still using this disc? And everyone was like, yeah, if you think you're going to be better with that, sure, go ahead, bro. And so I think that's the other side of it that gets overlooked is that we're self-governed. The card mates are the ones governing us. And there's not a PDGA Technical Standards Committee guy or a Rules Committee guy at the beginning of every tournament going through your bag and going, oh, what's this one right here? It's illegal. You can't throw it. Or weighing it and seeing that, your PDGA allowance is 175 grams, but you weigh 176.
Oh, and there's so many overweight discs.
Oh, yeah.
Tons of them. This whole conversation really brings up what is going to have to be like a whole nother episode of our podcast at some point, all about these types of rules and how they're interpreted or enforced. And I know like a lot of people when they're first getting into either playing in sanctioned tournaments, I'm sure you see other questions all the time on Facebook, on Reddit, and or even if you're a prospective tournament director. I've hosted unsanctioned tournaments, and like I want to get into hosting sanctioned events, but like the more I look into it and prepare for it and think about it, and I've taken the rules exam and stuff, I just start to have all these doubts about like people bringing up obscure rules and all this kind of stuff. Like it just feels so like it puts so much of that pressure on the people that are just trying to go out there and enjoy the sport and participate in it, are being put into these uncomfortable positions, card mates calling penalties on others. So hopefully we can find a way to do like a whole roundtable discussion about this kind of topic in the future, because there's a lot to unpack.
I agree, and I'm totally open to be a part of that if you'd like. I did contribute a little bit, and I don't know, how well you feel about cross-promoting or anything, but the company that makes my metal plates, my stamps for me, it's called High Pressure Stamps. They're, not, it's, tied to any, me or anything like that in a manufacturer sense. They're their own body, and, they make plates and all sorts of things for many companies. My point is these guys from High Pressure Stamps, I did a video for them on High Pressure Stamps because their business got hurt by this issue with the PDJ and the hot stamping issue. So I wanted to help them out by kind of doing a kind of, pretty scientific approach to how I would look at this situation from a pretty, logical standpoint. So I had invested in a scale that then we got certified by the Department of Weights and Measures, and that was like $2,200, the whole process of that and the scale and everything. And so then we took different foils, 6-inch by 6-inch, measured them, weighed them, got an average, and then we stamped a disc, or we weighed the disc blank, stamped it, weighed it, stamped it, weighed it, stamped it, weighed it, stamped it, weighed it, to see where the Rules Committee determined this detectable thickness. Because there isn't anything specific like 0.03 grams or 0.02 grams. And I was able to prove in this video that even though we stamped it 5 times, after the 3rd time it only added 0.03 grams. We stamped it the 4th time, it was still 0.03 grams over the 1st. And the 5th time, it was still 0.03 grams over the first, the initial disc. So And,
Wow.
5 stamps now, and we're still only seeing 0.03 grams of a difference. How is there the detectable difference or detectable thickness then, if you're using proper equipment and you've been trained? But then who trained me? It was all just trial and error. I didn't go to any class
Yeah.
or anything. So, that's where I think it's a really tricky situation, because let's say you wanted to buy yourself a stamper and you wanted to stamp some 6-sided discs, but you don't want to get called out for being illegal. You could go
Yeah.
online and pay to get one disc PDJ approved, send them a freaking destroyer, and it could be blank. Pay the $500 that it is now. It was $300. Pay $500, send them 3 discs, and they can approve you. I mean, you don't even have to send the discs technically. If you paid to become a manufacturer and you just never sent them the disc, and you now registered as a manufacturer and you haven't sent them discs, you're still registered with the PDJ now as a manufacturer. So now you can stamp discs. There's this
Wow.
crazy little workaround there that is really weird, that they've almost forced people to look at as an alternative to get around this kind of biased rule, when realistically I think we all know that if a disc comes back and you can like go like this and you feel like and it's braille almost on the disc, then clearly the stamper was stamping a little too hot or a little too hard.
Yeah.
Or a little too long. So, and I think with softer plastics, obviously you have a tendency to get a little bit more embossing, but it's a softer plastic. It's really hard to stick to some soft plastics. So you have to almost go a little hotter or a little longer to get it to stick. So do you want dropouts, or
Yeah.
do you want it all the way there with a little bit of embossing slightly? It's a really fine line to walk. And, when we look at these machines, this one was built in 1946, so it's not like these are brand new coming out of the market. They're all refurbished, and then I've had so many things break on it that you have to learn how to fix it yourself, and it is what it is. So
Well, and it was made years before disc golf was conceived, so they kind of been, foreseeing the complexities that we would be encountering with it.
yeah, it was made to stamp a book. It was stamping a 6-inch by 8-inch, page in a book. And then they had many different plates that were the pages and the writing in that book, in the novel or whatever. And they would stamp it.
Yeah.
So that's what this particular machine was used for. It's a 6x8 header plate. And that's the pages. That's what they stamped. It's a 6x8. Yeah.
Well, it's really interesting to be a part of a sport that's growing and is at this sort of stage where we really are still just figuring things out. When you think about how long ball golf has been around, or basketball or football, they've had time to figure these things out, and they've had enough people play and enough opportunities to really standardize these things. And of course, money plays a role in that, and having the infrastructure and investment to determine those things. Disc golf just isn't there yet, and so that does create these really weird situations where you as the person stamping the disc are saying, hey, like this is not a problem, but the PDGA, someone there, says it is a problem, or maybe they're saying it's a problem because they're worried about some other modification that's going to happen to the disc. Sure. Maybe that's going to happen. Maybe my disc here that we threw into a wall 5,000 times is illegal now because it's been altered so severely. I don't know. But if you were to just go and throw it into 5,000 trees, would that be fine? I don't know.
Exactly. Who's to say you didn't do that out on the course over the last 5 years? So it's so hard to prove, and I think it comes back to that self-governing aspect of it's really on our card mates, and how bad do they want to press the rules, and how much of a
Yeah.
stickler is your card mate. And I think that's
Well, there's one of those guys in every community.
yeah. I mean, as the population of disc golfers themselves grow, that population is going to grow as well. So it is
Yeah.
unfortunate, but I hope that it doesn't get to that point where even on like friendly rounds, people are going to, hold people to the fire over something like that. That would just be like, come on, we're in rec, or, you're gonna hold me on a gram overweight, because of we're in rec, like, it's not helping my score. And I think that's what we have to look at too, is that realistic reasonability side. That's probably not a word either. I don't know. Is that 4?
I'll take it. I'm buying all the fake words. They add words to the dictionary every year. No big deal.
Just gotta listen to me all day. We'll add a bunch.
So it's obviously hard to predict where the future is going for some of these things, technical standards, the PDGA, but what does the future look like for AGL? We're coming into a new year. Any big plans this year? Anything you can disclose or hint at, or what's looking ahead?
Sure, we definitely plan on dropping some new molds this year. We're talking about making a change to one of our current molds to hopefully enhance it. Make that for the better and more user friendly. We actually might make it more understable. And when we first started, there were some jokes. AGL always goes left, and we're trying to make it go right.
I can confirm without spoiling our first impressions video, there were a couple discs that did a little bit of right before they went left. So there's definitely some variety there.
Cool. Right on. Yeah. Well, the Money Tree is our flippiest disc to date, and that's our newest one that we just put out. So I'll have to send you one of those. That
nice.
one is got a -2-1 on it, and so definitely has some more turn. And if you go lightweight and flexi or something like that, you'll definitely get more turn, maybe a -3-0. So, yeah, we're looking at changing, one of our drivers into making it a little bit more flippy, a high-speed driver, and then, we have new molds coming out. We're always kind of playing around with plastics. We are talking about going out to Missouri and maybe making like an East Coast kind of team meetup plan event where, there are a good amount of players, close by to Missouri. Things are a little closer state-wise than California, where it's like, oh, you got 6 hours, you're still in California.
Yeah.
When I went to Missouri, I was there 5 days, and we were in 5 states. So it was pretty interesting and really cool to see a lot of different disc golf in those 5 days. And so, yeah, we definitely are in the talks of working out with a high level caliber player that would be on like the touring level, like the pro tour level. He and I are in talks. We were on the phone yesterday, and we just sent him a contract. And hopefully, if he likes and signs that contract, we might hear some big announcements rather soon. And, by the time this comes out, you guys may have already seen who that is. So, yeah, we're really excited about that. And then, we're building our own home course, which is going to have 18 holes. There's going to be 9 holes that are a little shorter, and, create a kind of one loop track. And then we'll have the 18 or the other back 9, so to speak, have a little bit longer loop track. And so it'll be a double loop track. And, yeah, I think that would definitely bring, some folks, if we had our shop and the facility and the manufacturing side of things all under one roof. That would be really, great for myself. It honestly would help minimize overhead and also allow us to have the potential to bring in some more income by, having a small, entry fee or something like that to keep going to course maintenance. We did already get a golf cart to rent out, so people could use on the property. We're
nice.
Yeah, there's talks of maybe having a spot where we, with so much acreage, we could have people a fenced in area for like a dog park, and then you could drop off your dog and go play around or something if you wanted to. There's just going to be a lot of different things that we have available. And my wife, is trying to talk me into maybe doing some food or coffee or something like that, available at the course, too. So, the fact that we're kind of following our family's dream of creating something that, could be in-house and, for the house, at the house, and, minimizing the overhead, which then therefore might allow us to actually pay Josh Jones and family some income. Because at the end of the day, I have not paid myself. I might get, this sweatshirt is an AGL sweatshirt, my bag is AGL, and my discs, right? I do, have some product that I gift myself. But ultimately, I don't pay myself, Josh Jones and family. The only money that we do take down is actually from our Patreon. That is the only income that we do take, so to speak, from AGL. But we started that with the intention of that and the honest transparency of that as well, by saying like, hey, if you do want to help and contribute towards the family, this is the one way in which you do so. And you get a fat discount. So you get like a 40% discount. There's a 30% discount, or a couple different layers of discounts. There's like 4 tiers, excuse me. So, and we plant trees in those tiers as well. And obviously there's Patreon merchandise as well. So a lot of cool stuff. And, they get access to certain things and posts and early access to stuff. And so they have some benefits of being members as well, for their contributions. And we're very thankful for that because, like I said, it's the only thing that really goes into my pocket at the end of the day from doing everything that I do at AGL. So very thankful to all you Patreons. I'm sure you have a Patreon program, Six Sided Disc, so I'm sure you're very thankful for them as well. So yeah, it means a lot.
Josh, if you would, please send me links to your social media, your Patreon. I want to include those in the video description. And then we're also going to include a link to our first impressions video where we're testing all the discs that you sent us as well, for everybody to check out how those fly and what we learned about them along the way. So thank you again so much for your time and for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks again for having me on, Greg. It's been a pleasure. Big fan of what you guys are doing over there at Six Sided Disc. Hopefully anything we could do to work in the future, definitely want to collaborate.
All right, everybody, huge thanks again to Josh Jones and AGL for joining us today. Comment below your experiences with AGL. We want to hear more about that. And also comment below who else we should reach out to have on the podcast. We'll look forward to getting some new guests in the new year. For All Six Sides and Six Sided Discs, I'm Greg. We'll see you in the next one. If you like this content and want to see more, please consider liking the video, subscribing to our channel, or supporting us on Patreon. Your support makes this content possible.